I'm Senator Rosa Franklin. When Dr. Martin Luther King was born, January 15, 1929, no one could have predicted how much he would change this nation and impact the world. This charismatic preacher seized the world stage in 1955 by leading a 381-day bus boycott in Montgomery, Alabama. That boycott protested Rosa Parks' arrest for refusing to give up her seat to a white man. It was an early example of Dr. King's ability to pick up the baton of those who came before him and advance the battle for civil rights for all Americans. The boycott led to a Supreme Court decision that opened the door to similar gains for years to come. Another example of Dr. King's leadership came less than 2 years later when he helped found the Southern Christian Leadership Conference. And within a decade, Dr. King became the youngest person to receive the Nobel Peace Prize for his nonviolent efforts to end racial segregation and discrimination. Armed with little more than his convictions and his conscience, Dr. King awakened Americans from coast to coast. He stirred them to action, drew them into the streets and into the most hostile enclaves of the Deep South, and reshaped the lives of generations to come. It was a seemingly impossible undertaking. During King's entire lifetime, racial injustice was the way of the land. Schools, restaurants, public transportation, hotels, and hospitals were all segregated. Job opportunities for non-whites were scarce and often limited to demeaning tasks or hard labor. In his book, Strength to Love, Dr. King wrote, "Like an unchecked cancer, hate corrodes the personality and eats away its vital unity. Hate destroys a man's sense of values and his objectivity. It causes him to describe the beautiful as ugly and the ugly as beautiful, and to confuse the true with the false and the false with the true." Between 1957 and 1968, it is estimated that Dr. King spoke more than 2,500 times and traveled 6 million miles. His resources were only shoe leather and buses. His currency was his strength of will, and through his efforts came systematic change in federal policy on voting rights and employment discrimination. In 1961, the Interstate Commerce Commission banned segregation in interstate travel. The Civil Rights Act of 1964 made it illegal to discriminate on the basis of sex and race in hiring, promoting, and firing. In 1966, the United States Supreme Court ruled the poll tax unconstitutional, giving hope and opportunity to groups long unable to benefit from America's prosperity. On January 19th, we observed a national holiday, or more appropriately, a day of public observance and public service in honor of Dr. King. It is an annual reminder of his example that through individual acts of servitude, compassion, and public involvement, we all thrive. One day later, on January 20th, we witness yet another dramatic example of Dr. King's teachings, that men and women should be measured by their merits, not by the color of their skin. Barack Obama was sworn in as our nation's 44th president after having been elected not just by a majority of voters, but with more votes than any president in our nation's history. From black and white, from Latino and Asian, from men and women, from young and old, from white collar, blue collar, and no collar, all across America, people from all walks voted for a man whose complexion mattered less than his ability to lead his country in this tremendously difficult time. How I wish Dr. King had been here to see this momentous event. We have come such a long way just in my lifetime. Yet our work is far from over. And soon we will have a lasting reminder here on the Capitol campus. Senator Jacobson and I have arranged the planting of a tree on the main campus in honor of Dr. King. Whenever anyone passes the tree, I hope they will be reminded of Dr. King and his message of equality and public service, and the need to put his teachings into practice, not just for one day each January, but every day. Because whenever we honor our neighbors, whenever we help the needy and the less fortunate, we build on the legacy of Dr. Martin Luther King, Jr., just as he built on the works of those before him. Every additional gain, every step forward is a fresh step in this man's footprints. Those footprints, half a century ago, guide us to this day and mark the path to human advancement as surely as they did when they were fresh. Thank you.